From calling out Shondaland for trying too hard to make Regency-era Britain multiracial, to the Bridgerton fandoms divided into two distinct groups, here's the real reason why Bridgerton fans don't like the Queen Charlotte spin-off. By now you all know that a heavily re-imaged Regency period is a signature look for Bridgerton, and no one was surprised when the same happened in Queen Charlotte: A Bridgerton Story. But the only problem is, series creator Shonda Rhimes went overboard when creating the multiracial society, and it just didn't pan out. Fans everywhere are annoyed and saying that Shonda's efforts affected the story in a bad way. Some are even calling the Queen Charlotte story an unnecessary spin-off. And before you start coming at me with your pitchforks out, let me explain. The show tells the story of Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. Quite a mouthful, I know, but did you know that the fictional miniseries borrows some facts from real life? True story. When Charlotte married King George, she became the future Queen of England. But there's a twist. Some historians believe that she was actually black, which would make her the first black Queen of England. That's definitely a huge honor. But there is no hard proof that supports this theory, and it's all speculation. The spin-off goes out of its way to explain the presence of people of color, and some fans think this creative historical twist doesn't need to be explained. One Reddit user wrote, "If using the instrumental versions of Wildest Dreams and Bad Guy needs no explanation, then a Black Queen of England needs no explanation either." So many feel that Shonda made a lot of big mistakes by trying to explain all of this away. Another fan said Shonda was fixated on justifying a multiracial society. One version of the real Queen Charlotte's story tied in perfectly with the story of Bridgerton, so Shonda thought, why not? Tried to connect fantasy with reality, and ran with it. Fans also have a major problem with the fact that this wasn't in the books. And I'm not counting the one she wrote after the Netflix production. That one's definitely been contaminated. If they were gonna make a spin-off, they should have gone with one of the stories already written. But here's the thing. In Shonda's defense, the CEO of Netflix pitched the spin-off idea, so the blame can't all be thrown at her. And to be fair, Queen Charlotte's a popular historical figure. And the trailer for this spin-off did get 1 million views in a few days. But just because Queen Charlotte's in the title doesn't mean the story's all about her. Charlotte's one of the main characters used to develop the story. Basically, instead of developing the story around her, they twisted her character to develop the story. One fan said, if you're going to present fiction, present fictional characters. I've gotta say that fan does have a point. Shonda took us all on a ride to explore historical what-ifs, and Bridgerton fans aren't on board. So if the creators are trying to make the world more open and appeal to a wider, more ethnically diverse audience, this isn't the way to go about it. If the creators are gonna rely on a true story, ignoring historical facts isn't a good call. For instance, slave rebels were growing in the Regency and Georgian eras, and it's not cool that the show simply put an interracial marriage stamp on that. The history of blacks in the Regency era is as complicated as it is rich, and saying that an interracial love saved the world trivializes their struggles. Journalist Nyla Burton called it cheap and intellectually bankrupt. Harsh words indeed, and while speaking at a panel, Bridgerton author Julia Quinn said she chose not to have black characters in her book. Not because she's racist, but because she only wanted to write happy stories, and blacks during that era didn't have that. So while reimagining history through the lens of Bridgerton was fun, the new spin-off falls short of capturing the magic of the original. If you want an example of this, just look at Lady Danbury's story in the spin-off. Clearly, some stories are better left untold. Some say that Shonda's storytelling was inspired by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And that's definitely problematic on its own, but making it fit in the Regency era? Now that's a little too much drama. Another issue for fans is that the show's really grim, particularly the second half of the show, which takes a dark turn. And while there's nothing wrong with that, the creators couldn't balance it with the series' romantic elements. So in the end, we were getting 2 full doses of romance and grim content, and it felt forced. I guess you could say that the show bit off more than it could chew, and Shondaland's out there trying to deal with racism and colonialism when both her show and her audience weren't ready for it. I mean, look at it this way. The show began with characters trying to figure out who the gossip columnist was. And you can't give your audience a spoonful of morality when all they're looking for is some steamy romance. With that said, I wouldn't be any good at my job if I didn't talk about some of the things they got right. Under the direction of Tom Verica, Shondaland's team was able to deliver the goods in a few ways. For one thing, fans are extremely pleased with the casting. The reins were handed to India Armatifio, who plays the young queen. Corey Malcrist is a young King George. Arsema Thomas is the young Lady Danbury. And it's cool to see how closely they paid attention to detail. Each of the young actors closely resembles the older actors playing their characters, which was a really nice touch. It makes the stories seem more connected, and the chemistry between Queen Charlotte and the young king was off the charts. But positives aside, there's one thing that still annoys Bridgerton fans. Now, whether it's a petty concern or a serious one, I leave it to you to decide. Bridgerton fans think the creators should have given the spin-off its own social media accounts instead of piggybacking on the original show's accounts. Some feel it's been a total takeover, which makes sense because if you head over to Bridgerton's social media accounts, you'll find that the only thing related to Bridgerton are the usernames. Apart from that, everything's related to the new Queen Charlotte series. It's almost like Netflix is blowing half of its marketing budget on this show, and I mean, what are they gonna do? The CEO demanded it gets made after all, so what's funny is that most of the comments on Queen Charlotte related posts are all fans demanding a season 3 of Bridgerton. Maybe this oversight will cost the spin-off series some views because chances are fans won't watch it out of spite. Speaking of which, did you know that the Bridgerton fandom's divided into two distinct groups? One side thinks that everything should be historically accurate, while the other thinks a bit of imagination is fun. Some of the fans who are posting against Queen Charlotte are saying that it's taken over Bridgerton's social media page and feel that crosses the line big time. But no matter what your stance is, there's no justification for using racial slurs. Online hate is nothing new, and there's been a great deal of that on the Bridgerton socials. So hopefully moderators step up their game and start dealing with some of the hateful remarks. Why? Because the cast members of the spin-off series are working extremely hard to give their best performances and honor the Bridgerton universe. And the last thing they need or deserve is to have racial slurs hurled at them. And more importantly, they're human like the rest of us and should be treated with respect and dignity. If Queen Charlotte's successful though, that'll be good news for the entire franchise, and it means that Netflix might greenlight more spin-offs. So there you have it, from the Bridgerton fandoms divided into two distinct groups, to calling out Shondaland for trying too hard to make Regency-era Britain multiracial. That's the real reason why Bridgerton fans don't like the Queen Charlotte spin-off.